Hello and welcome to the Long Talk. Hi, as you can see, I'm here with Stephen to help me with this one today because we have got a special man. We've got Cameron Bell, the CEO of Northland, and Stephen, Northland is your home province. This is one I think you're looking forward to.
Oh, very much so. And as you can see, I'm just dressed in the appropriate attire this morning. So, no, really looking forward to catching up with Cam.
So, hi, Cameron. Thank you very much for joining us. I think we're all in a sky blue today. That's we dressed appropriately. So, from what I understand, you only started at the beginning of March in this role. So it's been a bit of a baptism of fire.
Yeah, look, it has. It's and kia ora, guys, and thanks for getting us along here. And the screens look great in the best provincial colour in the country. But yeah, listen, it's interesting during the interview process, the items that were in play that needed to be attended to were pretty much superseded by the optimisation review that came out from New Zealand Rugby around the cost saving element. So they paled into insignificance, and then it was just like this insane double whammy of COVID-19 coming out, which really just put everything into perspective as to what was important, and it boiled it down. So, listen, look, it's tough. It's no tougher for us than a lot of the other people out in the community. So, it is a privilege to be leading Northland through this time. So, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. This is where I want to be leading. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll get into all that. But let's find out a bit about you first. Then, so what was your first rugby memory, either playing or watching? Where, how far? What got you into rugby in the first place?
Bit of disappointment that during my primary school years, my primary school didn't have rugby. So I played soccer and I didn't excel at that at all. And being blessed with slow twitch fibres, rugby was just, one of the beauties of our game is it accommodates all shapes and sizes. So I left all my mates at intermediate and went and played for Kairau in Wanganui under Ginger Johnson. So anyone in Wanganui will know Ginger Johnson. He's an absolute icon of the community rugby, and probably my biggest memories were being unspectacular, making up the numbers, but just loving it, as a lot of kids do. So there's nothing special in those first memories.
So you don't have memories of getting woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning with the fire on to watch the All Blacks on their tours to Europe and that kind of thing?
Look, apologies. Yeah. Look, Dad and I always got up in the middle of the night anytime the All Blacks were overseas. And look, it's funny. Even though I'm from Wanganui, one of the big memories I have is Joe Morgan in South Africa. Correct me if I'm right. It might have been, was it 76? Just it almost looked like the fields were dry and there was dust, and we were being robbed blind by some refereeing decisions when Robertson was held back for the try, but. And still getting goosies on the back of the neck when they're playing at Cardiff Arms Stadium and they'd be going out there and just seeing the admiration for the All Blacks. So yeah, listen, a lot of that, a lot of early morning, frosty mornings, playing over at Springvale, where Bill Osborne, our local hero, used to train and was a Kairau man. So yeah, look, it's just been there was a strong bond between the rowing fraternity where I sort of moved on to and rugby, but yeah, there was nothing spectacular until I sort of went to, it wasn't even spectacular when I went to Massey, but yeah. And it's interesting. We'd love to get back to those days where kids actually follow their heroes even closer, to get out of bed with the Milo, with the hot chocolate to watch the games in the middle of the night.
No, absolutely, and I do think getting kids connected back with the teams and with the players has got to be the way to grow the sport in the long run. So what was your journey into sports administration? Did you take a sports degree or a business degree?
No. Purely out of necessity. So we moved around a lot, and we landed in Kirikiri. And Kirikiri's got an awesome rugby club, probably one of the best in the world. But it's It was a club that had been led by guys. So I got involved in community rugby, right? So my son was playing. I did the refereeing, associate refereeing. A guy called Pete Knock, who's the father of Sam Knock, plays for the Blues now. A great local coach, and I did some administration, and then a guy called Paul Halverson stepped into that, and then there was an opportunity. The club was in dire straits. There were probably 3 on the committee, and the council at that stage were kicking us off the domain. So it was a real polarizing issue that sort of nobody else to do the job. It's as simple as that. So there was a great opportunity to jump in and listen. As much as this role is, there's a big element about giving back to the community. The leading Kirikiri through that change, and I was picking up the baton from a previous president that I know was paying the bills for stuff that the club couldn't afford to at that stage. So that's the sort of thing that embeds the passion for our game. Guys like Brian Mather, that was the president there, sweated, toiled, but we were in a situation where council had every right to kick us off, but we actually took a legal injunction out against them to change of council to come in, and then Wayne Brown came in, and Wayne, who I will support through and through, if you've been up to Kirikiri, have a look at the facility that's there. And you got young boys and girls playing netball, rugby, and the place is chock-a-block now. So there's this community legacy that's not my legacy. It's a legacy of the people that were in the community and on the committee at the time. So that was kind of like I got to understand grassroots. I got involved in Taniwha Cup, which is massive for all our junior rugby up here. And even Roller Mills for 1 year, where my son played, and then we had to move away for about 8 years, which was the saddest time. And I kind of moved to. I found that in a small community you can really affect some change and do some things. When we went down to the Tron, they had well established systems and people doing a really, really good job. So there wasn't really the need or desire. So I got into rowing, coaching at Hamilton Boys High until we came back here. But this is a job I've always, wanted. So it's I couldn't be. It sounds a bit perverse, but I'm loving this opportunity to lead Northland. Simple as that.
Just for our international audience, because we have people from around the world, Kirikiri. I'm not entirely sure where it is, but I know it's somewhere in Northland. What population of how many? What?
Yeah, look, it's probably. I think when we were fighting the council, it was probably around about 7,000 or 8,000. In the time that we were 8 years, it's probably up around. I think surrounding areas could be 10 to 15,000. So it's probably one of the best places in the world. Unfortunately, you can't visit us at the moment, but great rugby club. Like it's. I think it's the biggest playing participation numbers in Northland. It's also got the netball facility there as well. And honestly, the place on a Saturday morning is just chock-a-block. It's just like the only game in town. So it's for international people. They'd probably be more familiar with the Bay of Islands, Paihia. So it's just north of there. And it's a kiwi fruit mandarin growing place. So lovely place, great community.
Farming area north of Auckland. Which for anyone in the northern hemisphere, the further north you go, the colder it gets. Down here though, the further north you go, the hotter it gets. So good weather. I'm looking out the water at over towards Cody Cliffs. So Cody Cliffs is a world famous golf course. Cavallies are out to my right, and there's a whole lot of bait balls just playing up out in the water at the moment, but we're not allowed to go and touch them. So no, look, it's to be very clear, it's nowhere near Auckland, not even North Auckland. We are the far north. Yes,
guys, if I can just jump in there, Kirikiri's got a very special place in my heart. I actually made my debut as a commentator. There was a game taken to Kirikiri. It was back in those days. It was the ITM Cup, and it was Northland v Auckland, and that was played on the Domain that particular day, and they had temporary stands, and I think there was a crowd of probably about 5,000 or 6,000 that rocked up, and it was a great day. I've got a couple of memories from the day. Also meeting Winston Peters, who just happened to be up there, the brother of Ian Peters, who was on I think he was the chairman of the New Zealand Rugby Union at one stage. And by the way, happy birthday to Winston Peters. It's his birthday today. I won't say how old he is. So really special memories there. And about 2 years ago, my wife and I actually had a Christmas New Year's holiday up there, so we had a look at the new facility in Kitty, the rugby club and sports club, and I've got to say it's very, very impressive heading up towards the Stones store, I think it is, if anybody's ever up that way.
Yeah, listen, look, it's an amazing facility, and one of the other things that Wayne Brown did was he also he brought a blues game. Would have been the same setup, Stephen. They had rugby trucks around the side as corporate boxes with big curtain siders open, and there was thousands of people there. I think it was Blues Chiefs. I'm not too sure, but it was a super rugby game on the Domain. He said it would happen, and we never believed it. Well, a lot of people didn't believe it, and it was just amazing. And that's community rugby. If you take the rugby back to the community, they'll just come out in their droves, you know.
Yeah, I once went down to I've gone blank as to where it was now. The pre-season games between the Hurricanes and the Crusaders, and again, Ekatahuna was where that was being held, which again, middle of nowhere. We couldn't we even couldn't get back to Wellington, so we had to stay overnight because it was that remote that we couldn't get a bus or a train back. But yeah, no, getting those games out to those places is fantastic. So you've come up through the Northland kind of community rugby. You hinted at it during that first thing. So what were your kind of your key performance indicators or your goals that you were given when you were interviewing? How do they decide what a successful CEO looks like before it changed?
I think probably there's the big point that I was challenged to deliver on was connection with community. So the word executive level doesn't sound right. It's not appropriate, but at my level, I think we'd lost that connection with our community. So fundamentally, the game boils up from the community, right? So that's where it starts. That's where All Blacks come from. And Northland had kind of just deviated a wee bit away. Not so much the people at work in my teams. They were doing a great job, but there was an element to make sure that we were communicating with them. So that was a big part of the community. I'd say 80% of the weighting. There's a big responsibility around fiscal viability, which kind of plays in a lot. I think 10 years ago, Northland was in quite a dire state. I think we were probably 700k in the red, and the board and the team over those last 10 years had done a great job to claw us out of that hole. So there was no way that anyone wants to go backwards, so we put our game under pressure in the regions. And then there's also, in this role, it's a balance between community and high performance. I think we probably just gave the high performance we got the balance out a wee bit. So as well as we're bringing the community up into the position where it should be, we've still got to deliver at the high performance end, because that's what our fans come along to watch at Seminole Stadium. And one of the things I did say to the board during the interview process, I said, what does success look like? And then we talked about community engagement, financial. I said, and if Northland pull off the triple scissor move, that's going to be success. Now, as a young boy in Wanganui growing up, I knew of Joe Morgan, and I knew of this mythical move that the Going brothers would pull called the triple scissors. And I think, if a provincial team are bold enough, confident enough, and feel supported enough to give a move like that, it's insanely complex. But when you've got the flair and talent that comes out of Northland, we're probably the only region in the world that could pull something like that off. So if we have a go at something like that, so the confidence and we talk about getting the kaupapa of our region consistent and aligned. and from my perspective with a rowing background, it's all about making the boat go faster, right? So we get the understanding of who we are, what we want to do, how we're going to play rugby. Our waka will go fast, So really much that's the piece that's kind of been put in abeyance a wee bit, and it's really I feel for the high performance team at the moment. They're George Connier and Graham Jews. Yeah, they had some great stuff coming along in terms of what they were developing with the team, but it's just in a holding pattern at the moment. So success, yeah, triple scissors. Let's give it a go. But community engagement is absolutely essential.
Now, one of the things about Northland that's different to some of the other provinces is that it's a 4-hour drive across from one end to the other, something like that. So how do you, if you're like Auckland, you can get anywhere within half an hour. It makes it much easier to reach all your community. How are you kind of making sure you don't sort of leave some parts behind and some parts zoom ahead?
So look, absolutely. Well, that's an absolute challenge, I think, with the longest geographical union in the country. So like to Hapua, right down to Wellsford, it is a challenge. And up till now, probably the last year, the union really engaged well. So there's Academy up in Kaitaia, and we've got our regional development officer based in the far north, as we do in Whangarei and with access to Dargle. So listen, it's I think the community would probably tell you that we weren't doing a very good job maybe 2-3 years ago. Realigned better towards the end of this year. Now I'm just speaking from my understanding of it having come in, but I can tell you from a Northland Rugby Union perspective, we want to make sure that Northland is not perceived as a kiri union or a Whangarei or a Wellsford or a Kaitaia. It is a Northland provincial union, and the pride in the union is just amazing. So that's one of the things I'll be really driving through. And it had already been started by the team, so it's not like I'm coming in and sprinkling magic dust all over the place to make it right. There was some really good stuff already in place. So this is just about coordinating, pulling all those threads together so we're coordinated in our understanding of Northland. And I guess the communications at the moment, Paul, are very much focused on getting out to everyone in the community. So Wednesday night, I had an update via Zoom to, I think we've got 40 plus clubs. We've got more clubs than anyone. Auckland, I think, are probably less than 20. So we've got 40 clubs, which are often dictated by iwi or hapu or, local areas. So of 41 clubs, I went out to connect with just the main contacts, and 55 people turned up Wednesday night to get a bit of an update from me, and that just shows these are people in some of the remotest areas, like where we are, even where we are out Tapawaitahi. Our broadband speed is 7 megs maximum, so we can still communicate. So when you hear people talking about I need fibre, we watch all our telly on 7 meg download, and if I call out, I'll be telling the kids just to hop off the devices. They've been really so we've got people in remote locations. You would not understand how remote if the Horekis and the you have a look at the top end of our country and just see how remote. But these people came out on a Wednesday night, and they listened and they asked some questions. But the big thing is they got an understanding of my kaupapa. So when I say I mean Northland Rugby's kaupapa. So my commitment to the board was I was going to go out and I was going to get around the community and I was going to be involved. I'm happy to put the pads on the posts, mark out the fields. I'll go and referee junior rugby just to hear what grassroots are telling us. It's that important. So yes, this challenge, the tyranny of distance. Look, technology is probably, out of all this COVID stuff, there's some stuff we're going to learn. We're going to do some things differently. I think, I think personally, there's a big opportunity for us to make our game even better. And this way of communicating with our community is great. When the community comes to me and says, enough, we've heard enough from you, then I know I will have hit the right mark in terms of communicating with them. So we're doing everything we can to close that gap out, Paul. Absolutely.
So how was your focus? I mean, you mentioned that it changed initially because of the, I think it's Mackenzie-led change that New Zealand Rugby came out with, and I know that the findings of that are embargoed. So I won't ask you exactly what the suggestions were, but and then also now with the COVID, how you said you were 80% community, about 10 or 15% finance, and about 5-10% high performance. How has that flipped then with COVID?
Yeah. So yeah. So the McKinsey report was pretty much around some. They were just being. It was pragmatic cost trimming is really how I'd describe it. And I think when I came in and looked at it, I've had a lot of experience with McKinsey and at Spark and BP and other, and it just looked like prudent address of things that need to be trimmed. So what's happened since COVID? Yeah, the financial viability is just completely. It hasn't. It's almost like it's now 80% and community's now 80%. I'm running at 160%. That's kind of the reality, and I'm no different to anyone else. It's like just insanely busy. It's big long days. So the commitment to community is exactly what it was. If we get that wrong, the decisions that I have to make further down the track will be disconnected. So, and a lot of those decisions will flow out of the financial focus. So, look, COVID's had a massive impact. Sponsors, understandably, can't commit to the season. So, when I look at the jersey that you're wearing, the Ricos and the Lion Red, and we've still got Semco as our name branding. Those people have been fantastic, but they just can't. They're not in a position where they can commit to us. So that's a big revenue stream loss. When you look at projections around, if we're able to play Mitre 10, potentially it could be to empty stadium. So then that has an impact on gate takings because we have the most passionate fans in New Zealand. And Stephen will know that really well. And then hospitality and all those sorts of things go out. The other thing that's really underpinned us is all of our roles have a community element. And because of that, Oxford Trust have been just such a resilient partner, key stakeholder to the support of Northland Rugby.
Sorry, who are Oxford Trust?
Oxford Trust are the gaming trust up in Northland that support Northland Rugby and a lot of other sports. So if you think with gaming facilities closing and pubs and what have you, their last payment to us was in March, and we are using that to finance roles along with the MSD subsidy through this month. So the absolute focus of the board is to make sure that Northland Rugby Union is financially viable at the end of this year and at the starting line for the 2021 season. And honestly, it's a real challenge because also the other element of funding is New Zealand Rugby funding, and that's under risk at the moment. So there's a lot of big macro issues that New Zealand Rugby are dealing with that obviously flow down to us as well. So, we've been forced to cut our cloth to anticipate, the future and make sure that we're here in the future. And that's the hard piece at the moment. So the good work that was in play, a lot of that, we can't engage one-on-one, but we're trying to do as much of that as we can online at the moment. It's a big challenge financially.
So I've read in stuff that Southland have reduced their staff to a 4-day working week rather than a 5-day working week. Are you publicly able to say how you're cutting your cloth?
Yeah, and look, yes, I can. And listen, I'd like to think that one of my goals is for Northland to lead in terms of what we're doing and taking leadership positions and being proactive around this sort of thing. So look, immediately the borders were closed. I was actually in the box with the Blues board, right? So, for the first time in I don't know how many years, the Blues have got momentum up. Sammy Knock plays his best Super Rugby game, and it's just looking like this could be a turning point for the Blues. And then the call comes in. Don McKinnon, the chair, gets the call that Jacinda's closed the borders, and conversations were just, it was just like wildfire going around that room. So coming out of that, it was clear, driving back with Arjit Balasingham, who's our chairman, we needed to move quickly. So look, effective like 17th of March, we put a freeze on all expenditure. So that kind of signalled the moves, and then we were the first provincial union to apply for the MSD subsidy and receive it, and that tip came from one of our community. So Kylie Harper leads our Northland Junior Council, and that's one of the benefits of communicating with community. Some of the answers lie out in the community. So she really helped us there. We've requested holidays on all our rentals, but the hardest thing is the changes that we're making to our staff. So all our staff that aren't working full-time, we've got a core group that still are working full-time. Effective this month, they are moving to 80% of salary. Now, the work, they are all endeavouring to, some of them will still be working the 40 hours a week, and some of them just simply can't. So our staff for the next 4 weeks are already on 80%, and it includes the MSD subsidy. At the end of that 4 weeks, unless something happens, the bulk of our staff will be on MSD subsidy only. So the message is that we're cutting hard and deep, and it's the most hurtful thing to have to do. So you've got great people who through, if it was a performance management issue, that's, I'm quite comfortable to do that, but none of these people deserve to have this impacted on them because they're so passionate about what they do for the game in our community. And listen, I've shared that with our community and in the communications that have gone out. But post the 4 weeks of April, we've got another 8 weeks of the subsidy, and when that stops, I'm hoping that Jacinda will come out with an extension so we can hold on to these people. Maybe there's a change in the level and our activities out there, and maybe Oxford Trust will be in a position to be able to make some level of grant so we can hold on to these people. But beyond that, the hard reality is that redundancies are an option. And that really hurts. And so Northland Rugby is cutting its cloth hard and deep. And
and to do that, and when you say 17th, that's it all kicks off. That was 2 weeks into your tenure here. So that's it's been very quick and very fast. In some ways, it was good that you're in that room because you had a lot of the decision makers around you to make things happen fast. And I think that's been one of the signs we've seen across New Zealand is how quick and how hard not only government but also companies and provinces have made their changes. And I think that's why we're coming through this. You mentioned there were some good things going to be coming out of this. What are the good things? Part of it is going to be that people getting used to this virtual comms, which for a large region is going to be good for you. What are the good things are you seeing it coming out the other side of this?
I think what it's doing, Paul, is just challenging people's thought process. So I think the good stuff's going to come further down the track, right? So right here and now, trust me, it might look like a duck on the water, but I'm paddling hard underneath the water. We got some hard yards to get through in the next couple of months. And I think one of the things that's been a real benefit for me is coming in with fresh eyes and almost a naivety. And I look at rugby, and I think there's an opportunity for us to do it better than what we're currently doing it at the moment. And I think there'll be a lot of people looking at it like that. It's interesting. I've been watching a lot of commentary or that's coming out of the UK and Europe, and to me, it's a relief. There's some comments, and I try to grab them and just send them with the staff. So some of the best stuff that's coming out, I can't quite remember the clubs, but I think the club that took on Waisake Naholo, they're basically saying, we lost £4 million last year. We're going to lose £8 million this year. This just isn't sustainable. We are only going to be hiring local boys. If this is going to anywhere overseas, that's the best news I've heard, because we're losing so much of our second and third tier players out there. And what we've created, when I look back at it, we've created this market of demand that's probably, New Zealand went into, in '96 when we went into professional, it happened, and there was some arm wrestle. We had the World Rugby Circus. And it kind of ratcheted the values up, and over time, and while Super Rugby was developing, and we had a great game and great crowds, the demand was kind of being matched by salaries. I think we've got to a point now where we're probably paying too much. In terms of, it's just not sustainable. At the moment, the financials, particularly from a Northland Rugby perspective, are just not sustainable. You can see it's a house of cards. You take away some of the elements out of it, and it's forcing decisions like this. So if we can't take this opportunity to step back and look at our game, it would be great if we didn't lose second and third tier Northland boys to go overseas. And I think the Northern clubs would be even stronger if they had their own fellas in the game. So that demand that lures our players away is something that New Zealand Rugby works really hard to try and keep players here. I totally understand that. But from a Northland perspective, Mitre 10 Cup could be not. Mitre 10 Cup has a natural element in its tribalism, like not just culturally, but obviously for Northland with its natural cultural alignment to Ngāpuhi, the Waikato will always want to go the knuckle with us and Bay of Plenty and Taranaki because of that tribalism. And it didn't seem to ever transpire into Super Rugby. I jumped from Super Rugby teams. I was a Oliver's Army fan when the Hurricanes first came out because we lived down there. When we moved to the Waikato, it easily aligned with what Dave Rennie and the team did around the Waikato mana. They've got a great alignment with community there, and now I was just ready to jump back into bed with the Blues because we've got a couple of local boys and Tom Robinson and Josh Goodhue and Jordan Highland and Sam Knock in the team. So, but that's kind of but it's interesting. I will always be through and through a butcher's boy, Wanganui in the Heartland competition, and for some reason I aligned with Northland as well, and obviously my heart's there. So how can we grow on that? And some of it, there's some ideas. I know New Zealand Rugby's throwing ideas around how we create content for Sky, how they create content for Sky. They're talking about some really great ideas like bringing the North-South games back, and maybe if we went to province of origin, so you play your provincial rugby for where you first registered, that would get all the Northland boys that we are struggling to get back that have gone off to play rugby somewhere else, play their first 15 rugby. I think we've got 106 boys that are playing rugby in other colleges. So Northland's making a lot of other first 15s look great because look, the talent up here is insane, and those other colleges are smart. But in terms of if we could get the local players back into our national provincial championship, then the kids in the community see them, and you get that connection. And I reckon we could get greater numbers around club junior level certainly, and that's not just for Mitre 10. We've got some incredibly talented female athletes in our Cody and the Farah Palmer Cup competition. So if we could connect them back, and look, some of the conversations is New Zealand Rugby are really, they've got a huge challenge on their hand. They're trying to get content for Sky, and at the moment Super Rugby is still a very viable option. It is a good product. It's got legs. But as time progresses, it may, and this isn't a debate between Super versus Mitre 10, but it may put greater emphasis on Mitre 10. If they can get Mitre 10 on Sky, well, that creates 7 games a week. And if we're the only country in the world that's got a competition going, the world will beat a path to watch anything at the moment. Someone said to me the other day that I think Uzbekistan is the only country in the world still playing sport, and their table tennis champs have got a huge amount of support and focus. So if we could get and even the fallback position, let's consider the scenario. If you don't play Super, you don't play All Black tests, you don't play Mitre 10, even if we could just play 6 to 8 weeks and the Good Hugh boys are playing for Morawa Kawakawa United, and all the Super boys all around the country back out with their clubs into the community, there might be some of that silver lining in there. But I think we've got a chance to reset around financial expectations as to what we can afford to pay, and because we need to be. It's still about the balance between community, and I think we've lost some of that connection with community and the elements of our game. And in saying that, I look at myself first and foremost, and Northland are driving that really, really hard to reconnect. So what does I really get excited when I see the Frenchman was talking about the World Rugby Club Championship again. I just think that would offer so much. I'd drive down to Auckland to watch the Blues or play Leinster or something like that, because the quality of the game and the crowds they get over there, and it's better than what we're getting here at the moment. So there's something, and that's tribalism too. It's like Kiwis will always want to go and give with all due respect, the English a poke on the nose. And I think that would be a great competition. So how do we step back from this? And going back to the McKinsey report, when I first saw it, I thought that's a bit of window dressing. It doesn't go far enough to look at the strategic changes we need to make to our game. So that's the stuff that gets me excited. And how can we prepare Northland to be in a better state when we press go? So around our communication, how we look after sponsors, stakeholders. So use this time to plan for the future. I'm quite excited about that, actually.
Cam, Paul, I'm going to jump in. I've just got a couple of quick questions, just in and around your coaches. Now, I was lucky enough, I think it was late last year, I popped up to the Dargaville Sevens and had a really, really good catch-up with George Cornier. Now, this was way before he was announced as the head coach for Northland, but something that really impressed me was a lot of his kōrero in and around the community feel, how we could bring the game back to the community. And I've also got to say the same thing, dealing with Graham Jews over the years. I've always found Graham very, very forthcoming when it comes to talking about his team, the competition, even his time as the development coach, what they could do better. And I loved what he did at Waipu. I said, listen, how did you get these Waipu players to believe? He said, mate, I took them back to grassroots. I got a local kaumātua in. We learnt a little bit about the kaupapa of that particular wāhi or area. And because players needed to know what they were playing for. And I just have a funny feeling they're going to take that same kaupapa to Northland. Now, a couple of questions. These two coaches, what's your thoughts on them? I don't know if you were involved with the interview process, but these guys really impressed me.
Yeah, hey, look, Stephen, I think there's so many things you said just then. I just want to jump in and say, totally agree. I'm far too new into the role to have had any input into their decision making. But when they are successful, I'll be the first one to jump in and take credit for their success. No. Wait. So listen, I popped down to the gym to have a catch up with Graham and George several times, and I remember George when he was playing. In fact, I found some footage of a North-South game where John Olomu as an 18-year-old and George was playing in that game, so it was quite cool. So listen, and just you make an assessment when you meet and talk with people. Is their engagement back to community was exactly what we need. So it's what they're doing, I'm echoing in my role. So the thing for those two in particular, I'm just absolutely gutted that this thing has kind of put a press pause on the stuff that we're doing. We had a catch up with all the contracted players yesterday, and you could see by the attendance, we had all bar 2 or 3 players there. They were all engaged. They're all the banter was positive, so they're clearly doing the right thing. But Stephen, in terms of what you're saying around, if we can connect even stronger to who we are, where we all came from, and Northland will be unstoppable. It's like, and that's the thing. I talked about briefly before. The Waikato Chiefs mana, their connection to community. I think when they won that first title in 2012, they broke out a haka that was tight. Like, I'd never seen it, but they'd been practicing it obviously. And when they came out and they were leading it with Liam Messon, it was you could see that those guys and had practiced it and they were proud of who they were. We can do the same thing up here. We've got such strong roots, and Ngāpuhi, such a proud people. If we can reflect that character in the way we play, we'll have the same level of success as Chiefs. So that's the piece that's frustrating. We can't sort of execute on those elements that are coming through. And if we could get more of our boys back from the Aucklands and other areas, that would just add to it as well. So yeah, listen, I've been really impressed with George and Graham, and they've got a quiet, understated manner in which they go about doing their business, and I've got huge respect for that. Huge respect.
Before this kicks off, I was having a chat with Mike Rogers, the CEO of Bay of Plenty, and he was talking about the macro changes in rugby, of how it's changing from being a union invested and owned sport to a investor or private investor sort of investors and owned sports in things like Global Rapid Rugby, Major League Rugby, and the European clubs. So do you see that taking a bit of a hit with this whole with the reset of, as you say, of teams like London Irish looking at going back and hiring and looking more locally and hiring more locally? I've heard the same thing out of the French clubs as well. So it's a bit of a big question.
That's interesting. Listen, Mike's got more experience in the space, and he'd be better placed than I. But I guess again, from fresh eyes coming in, I hope it evolves a change that gives the governing bodies better flexibility to have competitions that are better suited for the audience, right? So I think one of the things that the frustrations with the international program, so when they're talking about having an international calendar, which has a lot of logic behind it, both at club level and internationally, the thing that seems to restrict them over there is the control that the private investors have on the club players, not being able to release them. So if it can affect the change in that space, that would be great, because I think the thing we need to connect with is, what do our audiences and community want to actually see? It's all very well that we think this this package here is what they're after and what they want. It might not be. I think, Marketing 101 says engage with your audience or your target audience, find out what they want, come back into your organisation and see if you can deliver to them at a profit to you. So I think it's a great reset opportunity around that. I think there's one of the clubs I was just reading. It sold for £1. I think the numbers they said were the revenues were 12.1 million, and their costs or their salary bill was 12.7. Well, there's a 700,000 gap, and I'm sure there's other costs. So the model at the moment, and I think probably when you get private investors, and I think English football is it EPL,
yep,
English Premier League. Some of these people invest in it. There's a big ego element. Now, New Zealand rugby doesn't. One of the benefits of New Zealand rugby is, as much as we want to go around and beat each other up, is that I don't see egos coming into play. Nobody wants. It's New Zealand. I Mitre 10 and Whara Palmer Cup or National Provincial Unions, Heartland. We can't go away from the community ownership. That's if we lose that, we're in trouble, because that's where we started from. That's where we grow from. And listen, the decision, the biggest decision that's been made recently that I have the utmost respect for is the Heartland competition, right? So those unions in that competition made a decision not to play their competition this year. In effect, it saves a bit of money for New Zealand rugby, but they were not prepared to play or sacrifice their club season. So, that's grassroots rugby, man. If you've been to any of those games, they are passionate, man. So, we are just another level of them. I don't think we're any better than them. I'd like to see more engagement with the Heartland community from the Mitre 10 competition, because I think we are one, and the more we can represent that, the better we will be. So, I think, keep private ownership certainly out of our provincial game. Crikey.
On that on that note, the only time that the Heartland Championships get to play the Mitre 10 Cup teams is basically pre-season games against the Ranfurly Shield holder. So I guess my plea: have some pre-season games against Heartland Championship teams. It would be what I would say is a step in that direction. For the I
think that's a great idea. Seriously, and that's what this is up. Even if it was a development team or there was some interaction, but listen, first and foremost, we haven't had the Ranfurly Shield since '78, and I was listening to Phil Holtz tell a story about the final player of that game, how the loose forward trio played to stop the Manawatu drop goal expert. There's a great story, and you listen to guys like that talk about it. We want to have the Shield back here one day. 78 is a long time between drinks, so I'll be putting our requirements ahead of the Heartland competition to get a challenge, with all due respect.
Having talked to the CEO of Otago when they had it in the off season. And he said, we had a few cheeky challenges that they turned down for pre-seasons. Sorry, Stephen.
I was going to say, guys, that Ranfurly Shield challenge, I've relayed a story to a few people. That's the 1978 challenge between Manawatu and Northland, when we pretty much went down there as a huge underdog, and Chippy threw the boot of Chippy Seminoff, who kicked 4 penalties. But there was 7 minutes of overtime in that game, and I can recall coming out of school to catch my school bus, listening to a caretaker's radio, and we hung around. I actually missed my school bus home, and we listened to those 7 minutes, and it was absolutely nerve-wracking. It's incredible what you remember as a Northland supporter, but I'll remember that big time, as I do with another famous Northland match in 2001 at Eden Park, when Northland beat a star-studded Auckland team. That was the first game first time we saw Rupeni Tautau Naumbuta, and Northland won 43-42, I think it was. man, best night of my life. And also that Ranfurly Shield. You know, our victories are far and few between, so wouldn't it be great to see a Northland team that gives something back to its public over the years? Looking forward to it.
Oh, look, absolutely. And that game as well, the 78 Shield game, from a Wanganui perspective, the referee was Bill Adlam from Wanganui, and a lot of my Massey University mates don't let me get away with how he stole the shield off them. So, but isn't that what our game is all about? It's all about those special memories, those one games. And listen, Stephen, if there's one thing I know, everybody that pulls on the Cambridge Blues and that's sitting behind, they want nothing more than to just consistently win. We just need to pull all the threads together for Northland, and I am absolutely confident that we will send people home from Seminoff Stadium knowing that they have been in a fight. You won't get an easy win over us. It's
funny how you mentioned moments in time at the beginning when you mentioned Joe Morgan in that second test in South Africa. By the way, that was at Bloemfontein, and I'll tell you what, it looked like Northland during a drought season, that particular ground at the time. But the name of the referee was a guy called Gert Besadenhund. Funny how you never forget it. You never forget a name. But I'm not a guy that holds grudges, so
yeah, but I remember.
Yeah.
Oh dear, brilliant. Yeah, I'll be honest. The way that I've seen the rest of the season panning out is that we'll probably have I thought we'd have a home and away short Super Rugby, and then the Mitre 10 Cup cancelled, and then all the Super Rugby players and All Black players into Club Rugby, because I can see how New Zealand Rugby can afford to sort of bail out or keep 14 provinces alive. I can't see how they can keep 1,000 clubs alive without clubs having games. So we have to get that club season and get people in the bars and having a few drinks in the clubs. It was my thought, and I think seeing those Super Rugby players and those All Blacks playing for their clubs again would be fantastic. It'd be a nightmare for me trying to cover that many games, but it'd be great to see those guys back playing at that level.
Look at Wood. I do disagree with you. I think Mitre 10 has got a great shot of being played, and that's our starting position. We've said to New Zealand Rugby, Northland will be at the starting line for a 14-team competition and for the Whara Palmer Cup. But there's some big decisions need to be decided before us and a lot of other unions. There's some unions that are in a worse position than us financially, absolutely. So we've got to look at the, not being disrespectful, the lowest common denominator, and just look at if another provincial union is severely at risk of pulling out, well, what can be done to make sure that they get to the starting line? Because the content that Mitre 10 will provide for Sky is significant, and the revenue gain from a New Zealand perspective is crucial. So I haven't, we're still playing Mitre 10 Cup, and we'll be fronting up there with 14 other teams. Northland will not be pulling out before anybody else. So yeah, a lot of water to go on. You can just see the number of scenarios, and even when I was talking to players, Tom Robinson said, "Oh, look, I've heard a rumour that we'll play Super Rugby up to this date, and then Mitre 10, and the final will be played on Christmas Day." No, it's true. That's exactly what he said, and I said, "Well, that sounds like a really interesting story, but I've heard nothing like that." So that's the thing we just got to be careful of, is that there'll be rumours floating around out there, and I've made myself open to our community to make sure that we dispel any of that, and that's why we're communicating so heavily with everyone to deal with backs.
To be clear, that was an opinion, not a.
I know.
Not something. Yeah. But imagine that. Well, I think Christmas Day is probably the wrong day because everyone should be at home. But imagine a Boxing Day final or a New Year's Day final. Boxing Day semi-finals, New Year's Day final. Oh, that'd be brilliant. Sorry, I'm now.
Paul, I was going to say, if you've met Alistair Robinson, who's Tom Robinson's dad, I think Tom has actually inherited his father's sense of humour. So I just think that may have been a bit of a pee take on his part.
Look, it could very well be, but this is, and then you get into the logistics of if we do push the season out. So we're talking with Sport Northland around the impact on the summer sports. So if you can imagine the facilities, there's also a protocol to get back to play. So if we move to level 3, I don't think we can play at that stage. But if we get to level 2, I'm not too sure. I don't know what the rules are, but we will adhere to the health and safety of our community as first and foremost. So, Ministry of Health will drive that, but we will also work in conjunction with other sports. So, we just can't take the fields that cricket would be. There's got to be some give and take once we get down to that end of the season. So we are talking a lot with Sport Northland to make sure that we work in with that.
Great. Stephen, any final comments? I know we've taken up a lot of Cameron's time. He's been very, very generous.
Yeah, just probably one more that always plays out. We spoke before about revenue streams and sponsors. I always wondered, Cam, usually you have 1 or 2 really, really big sponsors, or maybe 3 or 4 that you look after. But we spoke the other day about having a lot of smaller sponsors, but also, do you think unions should be looking at alternate revenue streams, like maybe being involved in their own business, especially to sort of sustain their union moving forward? Because I thought when this original module came out, I remember the salary cap being over $1 million, but if you sort of look at a union like Northland, I would imagine you've got a much smaller salary cap than any other union around the country. Yeah. But I guess it's a real tough one. Do you sort of agree with that line of thought?
Yeah. Listen, I think sitting within that, it's again what the opportunity for us to do things better is absolutely out there. So yes, having some key name sponsors is absolutely crucial just for the naming. But I think there's a different way of doing it. If we can go out to get, and this is where collaborating with other unions around what they're doing, is getting a wider support base around a whole lot of smaller businesses around the community that, rather than asking for a couple $100,000, just we go to them and say, listen, here's a package for an affordable amount, and we're going to give you a jersey and access to the game and players and all those sort of changing the model. But certainly, yes, you are right. We do have probably the smallest player salary cap, but even that's got to come down. So the discussions with New Zealand Rugby and New Zealand Players Association is a crucial element in all this, not just now, but also going into the future.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Cameron. It's been really enlightening and it's been a fantastic chat. Thank you, all the listeners. I hope to see you. If you're in Northland, get down to the Mitre 10 Cup games. I will be there in the press box. Stephen will be in the we'll have to see with Radio Sport as whether he is or not in the commentary box.
Oh yeah.
But I think between the two of us, we only missed one game last year during the Mitre 10 Cup up there in Seminole Stadium. So yes, please give a like to the New Zealand Sports Radio Facebook page, or if you're listening to the podcast, don't forget to subscribe to it as well. Thank you, Karen, for your time.
Thank you.